My mother, Carol, screamed at me to get out of her room when I found her in my bed with my husband, Mark. However, I am only doing this to ruin their lives and reputation, exposing what they did. My father, Richard, 63, and my mother, Carol, 60, have been married for 43 years. I, Sarah, am 40 years old and have 6 siblings. My older sister Emily is 42, then there's Jessica, 38, and Ashley, 34. I also have twin brothers, David and Michael, who are 20, and my youngest brother, James, who is 18. I have been with my husband, Mark, who is 39, since we were 15. I became pregnant at 17, and we moved in with my parents. I gave birth to our daughter, Sophia, who is now 22. We got married when I was 18, shortly after her birth. My father, Richard's dad, passed away soon after our wedding, leaving his ranch-style house to my dad. My grandparents had built a house next door to my parents when they retired. My parents decided to let us live in that house, telling us it would be my inheritance. Mark and I had no problem with that arrangement. After Sophia, we had a son, Jacob, who is 20, a daughter, Olivia, who is 14, and another daughter, Emma, who is 5. Currently, I am 7 months pregnant with my last child, a boy, Adam, due in April. I thought I had a good marriage. We were intimate more than twice a week, went on dates, bought each other gifts, and rarely fought. My entire world shattered on New Year's Day when I returned early from a girls' trip with some friends. I walked into my bedroom and found my mother having sex with my husband. My mother screamed at me to get out of her room, which shocked me even more. Unfortunately, my oldest daughter, Sophia, was also home, in her room on the other side of the house, getting ready for a party. She ran out and witnessed my mother, naked except for a sheet, run out of our house and into the house next door, slamming the door shut. Sophia was devastated and left for my sister Emily's house. I asked her not to say anything until I spoke with Mark first. I demanded the truth from him. He told me that my mother seduced him when we were 18 and living in their house. They had been having unprotected sex at least once a month for longer than we had been married. I did the math and was horrified because the timeline meant that my twin brothers, David and Michael, and my youngest brother, James, could potentially be Mark's children. I immediately called my dad, Richard, and told him to come to my house without my mom. I made Mark confess, and my dad was devastated. He and Carol had also been high school sweethearts. Needless to say, we could hear Carol screaming from her house when Richard confronted her. I then told my older sister, Emily, and she and I decided she would host a party for the entire extended family. We also invited Mark's family. At the party, I had my 22-year-old daughter, Sophia, take all the younger children to the basement to watch a movie, leaving only the adult children and siblings upstairs. I then told everyone exactly what my mother and Mark had been doing. Most of the family is on my side, except for my sister Jessica, 38, my twin brothers David and Michael, 20, and my youngest brother James, 18, along with Mark's entire family. They all say I'm the villain for exposing this publicly. The news spread quickly. My mother's best friend, who was in leadership at my childhood church where Carol was a children's pastor, called me to verify the story. Since then, Carol has been removed from her position. She claims that I have essentially ruined her reputation and her life. My dad, Richard, kicked her out, and she is now living with my sister, Jessica. Richard insisted on a DNA test for the 3 youngest boys, David, Michael, and James, before considering anything about his marriage. The twins, David and Michael, are biologically Mark's children. I have already kicked Mark out, and he is living with his parents. My dad and I are discussing me moving into his much larger house. He would then sell my grandfather's house and give me the money to buy a new house elsewhere to get rid of all the painful memories. My husband, Mark, is outraged and furious that I proved he is actually about to have 7 children instead of 5, and that I'm going to take half of his business. Mark started his own HVAC installation and maintenance company a few years ago. For the first 5 years, I helped him get it off the ground. I managed the office completely and stepped away from my teaching career to help establish it. In my state, all marital assets, including businesses, are divided 50-50. Since the house was still in my dad's name, Mark will not receive any money from its sale. My mom, Carol, won't either, as inherited assets are not subject to division in divorces. Furthermore, Carol is unlikely to receive spousal support because our state is not a no-fault divorce state. It has been over a month, and I am still overwhelmed with anger and resentment toward my mother, especially because of her hypocrisy in judging me so harshly while hiding something far worse. My feelings toward my ex-husband have also completely changed. I no longer recognized the person I once trusted. During that time, he was living a double life, betraying both of us in ways I could never have imagined. Not long after I became pregnant, I discovered that my mother was expecting as well, and the truth behind it shattered me. What I initially thought was a strange but meaningful coincidence turned out to be something deeply painful and complicated. That experience destroyed my trust, not just in him, but in relationships altogether. I've since hired a strong lawyer, the same firm that previously helped my father and me with financial matters, and he is supporting me through this process. On top of everything, my twin brothers, David and Michael, my sister Jessica, and even Mark's entire family have cut off contact with me and my younger children, leaving me to face this situation largely on my own. My children have basically lost all their grandparents except my dad, 2 uncles, and an aunt from my side, and Mark's 3 siblings, due to this disaster. I have also developed ulcers and digestive issues because of this, so I will be seeing a doctor soon, and I have been in therapy since the first week of January. I have offered therapy to my 2 adult children, Sophia and Jacob, in case they need family therapy with all of us. But right now they are in individual therapy. My 14-year-old daughter, Olivia, knows we are divorcing and why. She is so angry with her dad that I struggle to send her to his house on weekends. I feel she's old enough to make a decision about that, but I don't want to damage her relationship with her dad. I've told all my children that it's okay to love their dad, even if he hurt me, but the 2 oldest, Sophia and Jacob, have cut him off 100%. I won't tell my 2 youngest, Emma and Adam, why we divorced until they are teenagers, and everyone else has agreed not to say anything until they are old enough to understand. As for how I had no idea this affair was ongoing, Mark confirmed to me that they had sex in my mother's office at the church, in their cars, in a motel, and when we built the business, they started doing it routinely in his office. Once I went back to teaching, they would also have sex in our houses when my dad went on business trips, or I was out of town. It was purely by chance that I returned a day early from my trip because I felt uncomfortable being almost 7 months pregnant and just wanted my own bed. That's how I found out. Knowing that they would have continued this affair at full throttle if I hadn't caught them is what still bothers me. The fact that my children's grandmother and father cared so little about destroying our families is what I cannot get over. The hardest part for me is that my own mother did this to me and continued doing it for years without caring, and that when everything blew up in her face, she was destroying her entire family. Edit. To add insult to injury, Mark confirmed in one of our mediated conversations that the affair began when I, apparently, made him angry. He didn't tell me, and instead, he vented to my mom when they were alone. She consoled him, and they had sex. He loved it and sought her out afterward. He said he would have divorced me, but he knew he would be kept away from her, and that she was much better in bed than I was, so he stayed with me. He told me I was a temporary replacement. Of all the betrayals and low blows, that phrase is the one that keeps me awake at night. Update 1. I tried very hard to pursue a mediated divorce, but yesterday my ex-husband told me through his lawyers that he doesn't believe the baby I'm carrying is his, and that he wants a DNA test as soon as it's born because he doesn't want to support a child that isn't his. He also believes that I routinely cheated on him during the marriage, and that I knew about his ongoing affair and used that as an excuse to have my own affairs. None of that is true, but I almost wish it were, because it would make the divorce easier. My lawyer basically told me to prepare for a long, protracted, and brutally contested divorce, and that my ex will probably try every dirty tactic in the book to make my life even more miserable. Edit. My pregnancy was the only reason I didn't end up in jail for stabbing him in the eye. I'm going to ask that my ex-husband pay for a child therapist so we can discuss how to tell my 5-year-old daughter, Emma, and my unborn son, Adam, that their aunts and uncles are actually their half-siblings. Update 2. This went viral on Twitter, and thanks to those who privately messaged me to let me know. So, I'll answer some questions raised both here and there. My twin brothers, David and Michael, resemble my egg donors side of the family. They look very much like my uncle and my grandfather. They clearly don't resemble my dad at all, but they don't look much like Mark either. My son, Jacob, looks like my soon-to-be ex-husband, Mark, and he is the only child where it's noticeable that he is Mark's, although my 14-year-old daughter, Olivia, has his nose and jawline. That day, I was definitely filled with rage, but my dad, Richard, pulled me back from the brink of murder and reminded me that I had to think about my baby and my other children before doing anything that would take both parents out of their lives. That's what saved them. Even so, I lived in a haze of rage for the following days, which led to the revenge party. My only regret is not telling my brothers privately that my egg donor had been cheating. Honestly, I don't know all the reasons why my sister Jessica, 38, is siding with my egg donor. However, since she hasn't gotten along with me or my other sisters since high school, I'm not too worried about her. My twin brothers are upset that I released the news publicly. That's what my dad has managed to get out of them. They are also in therapy, and my dad told me to simply give them time. He believes they are just killing the messenger. I didn't tell them the possibility that Mark could be their father, but they can do the math and realize they are the same age as my son, Jacob, and younger than the duration of the affair. My dad sat down with them and explained that his reason for the DNA test was to prove the cheating, not because he was going to abandon them. He is their dad, regardless of whose sperm fertilized the egg. I don't believe my egg donor and my soon-to-be ex waited until he was 18 to have sex, but at this point, I'm letting my dad fight that battle and do what he needs to when dealing with her and her divorce. I have contingency plans ready to activate in case they decide to move in together. However, my lawyer doesn't believe my ex-husband is stupid enough to do that with the divorce turning nasty. I forgot to add this earlier. Mark is 4 months younger than me. My birthday is in December, and his is in April. He will soon turn 40. We were in the same grade throughout school, from kindergarten to high school. He is not a full year younger than me, as some speculated. I am focusing on my pregnancy, my children, and moving forward. I may provide an update when the divorces are finalized, but thank you all for the support and advice. Thank you for letting this hormonal, sad, furious, and bitter woman vent and get this off her chest. Update 3. Today, I had a phone conversation with my aunt, my egg donor's sister. She told me there's a family history of infidelity on their side of the family. My grandmother cheated on my grandfather for years, but they reconciled, and my aunt herself had multiple emotional affairs but remains married to my uncle. She tried to blame genetics for my mother's affair. I laughed out loud at the absurdity of that attempt to justify the affair, and now my aunt is upset with me for not listening to my egg donor and her explanations for cheating. My dad and my lawyer say I should listen to her, so I am still considering doing so just before we meet in early March to establish custody. Yet it. I should mention that I asked my aunt if my mom inherited the bitch gene, which child she passed it on to, and how my grandmother managed to pass it to both her daughters. So that's probably why she's angry, in retrospect. Honestly, I lost all sympathy for cheaters after this, if I ever had any. Update 4. I tried to update this in the previous post, but it won't let me add another edit, so here's the latest that has happened. My dad's lawyers and mine encouraged us to meet with my egg donor for evidence and closure. This update is about the answers they gave us regarding their decisions when we met. I met with my egg donor, my dad, and our lawyers last night. Basically, my egg donor said she knew it was wrong, but she enjoyed the attention. The sex was great, and she enjoyed the thrill. She kept sleeping with my dad because she enjoyed his financial stability and carefree life, and she wanted to stay married. She deliberately slept with my dad after each sexual encounter with my ex-husband to ensure that if she got pregnant, she could pass the child off as his. She also admitted that she enjoyed knowing my ex enjoyed sex with her more than with me. Then she said she would move in with my ex-husband at his new place and invited the boys to live with them. The twins have gone once since the affair became public, and they told her they don't like my ex and refuse to treat him as their father. She said they would eventually come to their senses once she's married to my ex-husband, and then she would get her family back. I laughed out loud and told her she was delusional and needed psychiatric help. Then I told her I was going to seek a protective order against her so she wouldn't have access to my younger children. She called me a jealous, ungrateful cow for not appreciating that she didn't abort me and let me live. She said I should be happy I wasn't cast out when I got pregnant. She even had the nerve to say I should thank her for keeping my husband happy when I couldn't, so he wouldn't divorce me and leave me as a broken single mother and damaged goods. Then she told my dad that she suffered from postpartum depression after my birth, and that my dad ignored her and made her feel alone. So, she felt justified in hating me and having affairs. She admitted to having multiple affairs from 6 months after I was born until New Year's Day, and that she would still be doing it if I hadn't ruined everything. So my sister Jessica, 38, and my sister Ashley, 34, might not be my dad's daughters either. My dad is even more heartbroken and angry, but we had both lawyers present and put it on record. My dad has already reached out to my sisters. But to no one's surprise, I suppose, my sister Jessica, 38, already knew it was a possibility because my mom told her about both affairs when the twins were born. She knew they might not be my dad's children and hid it from us. My dad is devastated by that, even more than by losing his relationship with my mom. I'm not sure if their relationship will ever recover. I truly have no idea what's wrong with my sister Jessica, 38. My sister Ashley, 34, doesn't want a paternity test and said that our dad, Richard, will always be her dad. My dad is fine with that. I sent a message to my ex-husband Mark through my lawyer stating that tomorrow I will file for a protective order. This order is to ensure my children don't have to go to Mark's house if my mom, Carol, is there. Neither of them has tried to find new housing, so I assume Carol plans to move into my ex-in-law's house. I really don't want my children near that mess. Mark hasn't responded yet, but at this point, I don't care what he wants. Edit. My family knows about the social media posts, as do the lawyers. However, my ex-husband and my egg donor have no chance of a good outcome in the divorce. So, I'm going to be spiteful and enjoy their anger at being exposed. I'll leave it published. Let them wallow in their filth and know that not only our town thinks they are terrible, but the world does too. I have my youngest sister's permission to share what happened last night. I don't care what my sister Jessica, 38, thinks. Update 5. Thank you to everyone who has sent me chats and messages supporting me and asking how I am. Yes, I have an update. I gave birth to my son, Adam, in early April. He is healthy and I had no health complications. In late March, I was able to obtain full temporary physical and legal custody of my children. My 14-year-old daughter, Olivia, asked me if I would be willing to do family therapy with her and her dad, Mark. I didn't want to do it and resisted, but ultimately chose to for my daughter's sake and her need to process everything and hopefully move forward. Through the exercises our therapist assigned, I began to uncover more about the connection between my ex-husband and my mother. Some of what he shared felt disturbingly consistent, and I believe much of it is true. According to him, her behavior toward him had crossed boundaries long before we were adults. He recalled that when she became more involved in the youth group, she began singling him out for private guidance, claiming he needed extra support. Over time, those one-on-one interactions became increasingly inappropriate, though he insisted they never went further physically while he was still underage. What hurt even more was learning that, around that same time, she encouraged him to start a relationship with me. He now believes it was a way for her to maintain access to him without raising suspicion. Hearing this left me completely devastated, as it reframed years of my life in a way I never could have imagined. My entire relationship was built on a lie, and my husband never loved me. I also felt a kind of relief knowing that I had absolutely nothing to do with their affair. The reason I believe this is true is that when he asked me out, I had to ask my parents for permission to have a boyfriend. At that time, the rule was that no one could date before 16. My mom advocated for me, or so I thought. We started dating just after he turned 15. The timeline fits. My dad, Richard, is currently investigating possible other cases of abuse and manipulation with the help of church leaders. Nothing has come to light. And honestly, although I hate my egg donor, I find it hard to believe she had the energy to conduct multiple affairs with other boys. I believe she seduced him knowing I liked him and wanted to feel superior to me. Looking back, all of this makes sense. How she treated me and my children compared to my other grandchildren. I think this was all a twisted case of her being narcissistic and punishing me for ruining her life. They didn't have full sex until he turned 18, and I suppose that was his birthday gift from her. My children, Sophia, 22, and Jacob, 20, still don't speak to him, which he has accepted and understands that they will probably never reestablish contact. The twins, David and Michael, and I have fully reconciled. Now, about the egg donor. After the last call with my aunt, I cut contact with her and my grandmother. I was tired of my aunt trying to guilt-trip me into talking to my egg donor. My grandmother is another problem. She's starting to show signs of dementia and senility. She keeps harassing my egg donor and calling her the whore of Babylon, which I'm fine with, but the other things she does and says are not something I want to add to my stressful life. My sisters, Ashley, 34, and Emily, 42, were the ones who helped me with the birth plan. Mark knew what the plans were, but also that I didn't want him at the hospital until I had already given birth and was in a better mental space for him to meet his son. He agreed to that. The day I went into labor, my sister Ashley, 34, took my daughters Olivia, 14, and Emma, 5, to her house, while my sister Emily, 42, was with me in the room. Apparently, Olivia, 14, needed something for school and contacted Mark to pick it up and drop it off at my sister's house. My egg donor, Carol, was with Mark when he received the call. He was still on the official pickup list at the time. He's not anymore. He refused to let her come because I didn't want my children near her. Apparently, she followed him in her car to the store and then to my sister's house and threw a tantrum in the front yard. Mark ended his relationship with her, telling her she was too much drama and no longer worth it. She became enraged, physically attacked him, and started destroying things in my sister's yard. The police were called, and my egg donor was arrested for domestic violence. At that point, Mark, my sister Ashley, and I all took out protective orders against her due to the instability in the situation. Mark moved into an apartment near his company. My 14-year-old daughter, Olivia, has decided not to forgive him and told him she didn't want to be around him for now. So only my 5-year-old daughter, Emma, visits Mark. He comes to my dad Richard's house and sees Emma one weekday evening, and one weekend evening when I take my other children and my twin brothers out for dinner. We established contact through a custody app and will revisit the custody issue in June. I will seek full physical and legal custody until Mark demonstrates that he has undergone the therapy and treatment he needs. I still hate Mark with all my being for what he did to me from the time I was 15 until recently. But I hate my egg donor much more for what she did to all of us. I do have some sympathy for him and truly want him to be well for the sake of my younger children. Yes, he has already met his newborn son, Adam. He met him the night I gave birth. I also allowed my in-laws and Mark's siblings to meet Adam. My in-laws and I are arranging plans for my daughters, Olivia, 14, and Emma, 5, to spend time with them, and also for them to come see my newborn. Mark is allowed supervised visits for now and has regular time with my 5-year-old daughter, Emma. This is not a court-ordered visit, but by my decision, and he is respecting it while undergoing therapy and rehabilitation. He can also see our newborn at least once a week if he comes with his parents, should he wish. He has seen his son at least 6 times since he was born, and 3 of those times in my presence. We are slowly rebuilding civil communication. As for the rest of the divorce, he agreed to a mediated, undisputed divorce, and I will get half of everything, including the business. I am choosing to sell my shares to one of Mark's employees who wants to become a partner. Mark is happy with that, and I will be happy to completely cut all ties with him. My dad, Richard, was able to sell my previous house. It wasn't even listed because our people already knew a family who was interested. I have started looking for houses about 45 minutes from where my dad lives. As for my egg donor, Carol, she has gone into hiding. Once the twins unequivocally told her they would never live with her and wanted nothing to do with her, especially after her arrest, she started with a lot of guilt-tripping and reproaches towards them. She is now contesting the divorce with my dad and only speaks to him through her lawyer. With regard to my sister Jessica, 38, this whole affair was a wake-up call for her when my mother called and ranted and insulted her for 45 minutes for not bailing her out. Apparently, my sister Jessica had been going through fertility issues. As I said, I don't speak to her and had no idea. She had been stressed, anxious, and feeling bad about herself. That's why she let our egg donor manipulate her, because she felt good receiving all that positive attention. When she didn't want to pay the bail money because she and her partner were saving for another IVF cycle, she realized she was being manipulated and contacted me. We have slowly started talking again, and she is on my side regarding all of this. She also started talking to my dad again, and for his sake, I'm glad he can reconnect with her. Having my son, Adam, has been a pleasure and a joy, and he, my other children, and my support system of my dad and my siblings have gotten me through this and will continue to do so. By the way, we did the DNA test a few weeks before he was born, and he is definitely Mark's. I am hopeful that at some point I can deal with my ex-husband without bitterness, considering he has trauma from what my egg donor did to him. I am going to be okay. As I said, this will be my last update on this. So, thank you for all the kindness, love, and support. Update 6. I know what I said about this being my last update, and I had a good reason for it. At that time, reliving everything that was happening was taking a toll on me. I just wanted to try to think about the topic as little as possible. That's why I believe therapy is something everyone should try. It's not a magic solution, a silver bullet that makes life look better, but it offers tools to think clearly. Instead of suffering every time a trigger appeared in my head, I now have tools to reframe that thought and make it affect me less. It still affects me, and it always will for the rest of my life. What I saw that day, and what I later discovered, is something I will have to live with, but at least I'm not letting it govern everything. I owe a great debt to all of you because a lot has happened during this time. I hope not to forget any of it, or at least the most important parts. My grandmother passed away. I've talked about her in my posts, and I've also explained why I didn't have the best relationship with that woman. To be precise with you, recently I had no relationship with her at all. I know she passed away, but I didn't attend her funeral. And as for my children or my siblings, none of them attended either. I believe my mom, her sister, my aunt, and other relatives from that side of the family did go. Basically, those people who think cheating is okay, that it's a disease, that it's something they have in their genes. My sister Jessica, 38, who is no longer that age, did not go, and we had started to have a relationship. I wouldn't say good. Our relationship never was, but it was cordial. She had cut contact with our egg donor because she thought she had been manipulated her entire life. All of that until she finally became pregnant after several IVF attempts. However, her husband began to suspect her more, and even though she didn't get pregnant through infidelity, he discovered she had been unfaithful. Almost none of the siblings know exactly what happened between them, or how he discovered the infidelity, but she blames me. She still thinks my way of revealing things was wrong, that I should have spoken privately, and that's why she says it's my fault because I put ideas in her husband's head. She also has to blame Jeans for being unfaithful, never for having been an idiot. I'll just say that she doesn't speak to any of her siblings, and that's fine with us. Now, with respect to my ex-husband, Mark, the divorce turned out to be quite easier than I initially thought. Not easy, but not as bad as I assumed it would be when he started arguing about everything. We divided everything except my inheritance. I sold my share of his business, and that was that. However, a few more things have happened that I'd like to tell you. The intention was to sell my share to one of his employees, but he couldn't secure the financing, and I needed the money, not a payment plan. Or that's the version he gave me, because there's more on that later. My ex-husband found a buyer with the money, since he also didn't have the money to buy my share. But thanks to that new partner, shortly after the divorce, I was free of it. I don't have much contact with my ex-husband now due to what comes next, but Mark ended up selling the business. He and his new partner made some bad decisions and were losing money until they decided to sell. There's also another reason that explains why his employee didn't buy that share. The reason I don't have much of a relationship with my ex-husband now is that I finally obtained full custody of my younger children. As far as I knew, my ex-husband and my egg donor were finished, but I wasn't very convinced of that when he and she always talked about being the one for each other. Since I had protective orders, my egg donor couldn't see my younger children, but she did anyway during one of their visits with their father. Using that as an exposure risk since she has a history of violence and my ex-husband put them in danger by allowing them to be near her, I obtained full custody. Our communication now is practically non-existent. Supervised visits are arranged by a third party, and I just have to make sure to bring my children at the agreed-upon time. Although only my baby, Adam, and my 5-year-old daughter, Emma, who again is no longer that age, but that's how they are known, are the ones who attend. Olivia, 14, stopped having contact with her father a long time ago. After Mark lost custody of his children, that was truly the end between my egg donor and my ex-husband. Again, as far as I can tell. I realize how long this post is getting, but I promise this is the last of it. It has to do with my egg donor and connects everything. My father, Richard, divorced her, and besides keeping the house, he also avoided paying the support she was requesting. We discovered that she was telling some people that she would eventually get it and use it to live with my ex-husband, that her ex-husband would pay for her to live with her lover. I think there are no words to describe her. Carol, who is my egg donor. There is no one word that describes her from head to toe, but you all already know her, so I'm not telling you anything new. Not only did she not get it, but my father managed to file charges against her for grooming. In this state, the charges are not known by that name, but for you, it's the same for practical purposes. He also found another victim of hers. She was given 6 months in prison, plus a long probation, and must register as a sex offender in every state she travels to. She was lucky not to have had sex with either of them while they were minors. Still, this will haunt her for the rest of her life. She cannot have a job that involves contact with minors, although there's no church job waiting for her since I made everything public. My ex-husband, Mark, also sued her for psychological damages, and that's the only thing that makes me think it's really over between them now. But even though he obtained a favorable judgment, My mother has been left practically penniless. After being released from prison and the divorce, she has only had sporadic jobs. It has to be a job where my egg donor has no contact with minors, but also far from schools, so her options are very few. I'm sure my ex-husband knew this, but sued anyway to use it to clean up his image. One theory why his business failed had to do with his reputation, something his new partner didn't know because he's from out of town. Now I really think that would be everything. Many of us are still in therapy and will continue to be for much longer. My children and siblings attend to varying degrees, all trying to heal what they can. Edit. I'm not saying my ex-husband cannot be a victim, but he continued this behavior into adulthood at 40 years old. Being a victim and being a waste of a human being are not mutually exclusive.